Alright, good morning. Welcome back to JYR Trades. I know it's been a couple of days since I last posted the video where, I did three short videos back to back from, I think it was Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
10,000 times.
Alright, so this is my son, alright, and he wants you to subscribe to JYR Trades. So if you could do me a favor,
And give us a like a lot of times.
give us a like a lot of times, like us a bunch of times, subscribe, share, and comments. Okay, I swear I think he's more into YouTube and YouTubers than I am. I'm doing this particular journey myself more than anything so I can video journal. You know, there's different ways of journaling your trading process, your trading journey, and I think video journaling is one of the most powerful ways because you can go back and see what the market was like prior to your trade, what the conditions were, and it's going to help you remember faster. You're going to remember things and you're going to see the similarities, differences on some other days. And so, with that said, yeah, that's what I'm doing here, you know. So let's get going. Now, this particular trade was from Friday. Okay. Now, before I jump into Friday's trade, I want to tell you that I broke one of my rules on Thursday. It was okay, and I'm gonna go back to that video part, to that section. For that particular day. Now, I had been trading with the minis and not the micros. This is the micro, okay? And I've been trading with the mini already for about a week, and I have had good success with it. Okay, I had been prior to that. I've been, I guess you can say, training myself to training myself to what is it called? To try to trade out longer with the micro. The psychological move on micros versus the minis, it's not as painful, obviously, okay? Because you don't see that drawdown when it happens. You don't see it as bad
Exercise.
as a mini, and so normally I trade with two minis, which can be quite a bit, you know. And so I accidentally one morning decided to trade with my phone. And if you remember one of the videos, I talked about how when I went into that trade, I automatically started having one morning, I mean, great numbers. So when I was going into the green, I was like, "Well, what's going on, man?" Because that morning, if I recall, I decided to go from one micro to two micros, so I went ahead and changed right here to from one to two, and so I said, "Oh my gosh!" I said, well, "From one micro to two micros, we're making some huge profit, you know." And next thing you know, I looked at the actual asset, and it said actual minis, and I realized this is not the micro. So I guess on my phone I had it under minis, whereas on my computer I had it under micros, right? So I started doing minis because I realized, like, you know, I started making profit considerably, right? And I was like, I'm getting better at this. I'm getting more comfortable with it. I'm beginning to understand rotational days. I'm beginning to understand repair days, initiative days. I'm just beginning to understand the market structure. Now, I had been having nothing but green days for a good week and a half or so, almost every day trading. Um, Even on the days that I went on vacation, you know, I was like, I'm just gonna get up. I'm just gonna get on my phone. Boom, boom. I didn't even take my computer when I went on vacation. Took my family to SeaWorld. I said I'm just gonna trade from my phone, and because there's gonna be days where you're just gonna trade from your phone. You gotta feel comfortable with it, right? So I'm like, I'm gonna take it, and I traded Monday and Tuesday. We were out there in San Antonio and SeaWorld, and we had great days. It was, and then on Wednesday I didn't trade because I was driving for the most part that morning, and as you know, driving and trading, not a good combination, not a safe thing to do. But I did see the structure on that particular day. I remember that I had set up all my lines. I had set up my mids. I had set up my POCs and all that. And I just saw that at one point, once price started going down and it passed that final POC, I was like, this would have been the move that I would have taken. And it was a day to get some good change. And then the New York PM, excuse me, got a little itch here. The New Yes, right. The New York PM, it decided to almost make the same move, but man, that one really moved even further down. So on Thursday, I woke up, I hear it back at home, back in my routine, and I felt very confident. And confidence can be a dangerous thing when. Let me put my music here. Confidence can be a dangerous thing when you start getting good, when you start getting better at it. Problem with that is that you need to understand when you're trading market structure and you're trying to understand everything about market structure, just because everything lines up the way it's supposed to doesn't mean you go into a trade blindly, or trade before you get confirmation, or trade before you get permission, I should say. And that's what happened to me on Thursday. So I made the mistake of trading before I got confirmation. So everything was, and this is Thursday, what's here on my screen, by the way. Okay. Everything was showing me. Everything was showing me that it was going to trade down. In fact, I think I went in right around here, and I started seeing some profit. I started seeing at one point with my 2 minis like a $900 profit, and I was like, and I should have exited out when I saw hesitation here. But the reality is that because I was looking at everything the way it was setting up, in other words, all my mids were above me. We opened outside of New York value, below New York value, outside of the mids, below the mids. All the POCs were also above me, so I was like, oh man, this is gearing to be a straight down day. Made the mistake. So I went in, and long and behold, started coming back up. And then post-migration happened. See, post-migration, this program that I built right here, Remitar, gives me the value of the fair zero. By the way, these are you can see right here, these are all my mids from that day. Alright, these are all my lines. Right, we have New York value here, previous day high, previous day mid, alright, and so on. I'm not sure if it's from that day or from the day or the day next. I think this is from the next day. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, but they were all up here at some point. And so I felt confident going into the trade. The problem that I learned, and this is what I learned after that day, and this is why I'm going over it with you guys here, is that you see this line here, my Remitar? Yeah, it migrated south. Yeah, that's the other confirmation that I usually get. When it migrates south, usually that's the last confirmation that we are gonna go south, more than likely. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen right away as soon as it migrates. No, it usually means that price may have to rebalance, and then it's going to make the move south. But the problem here was this, guys. Check this out. When I measured this, look at that, 540 something points. That means that price was overstretched. Now, of course, you have to take into consideration this amount. in your ATR at that time, and make some calculations. But this right here should have been a big, big, a big, and I did kind of see it. It should have been a big warning that something was not right, right? And so what did I do? Of course, I started. I did a little revenge trading, and long and behold, by the end of the session, I had like 3 losses, and I realized, like, that day I started to, I did a lot of self-analyzation. I guess I started to analyze myself, what, and my system and all that. I went outside, started doing some farm work, some major yard work that I needed to do, and I just forgot about my day. I just went about my day. But I started to realize at the end of the day, when I went back to bed and I just opened up the app and I looked at the trades, I was like, you know what? Really, gonna be honest with you. I don't have my fib set up here, but if I had just waited for Remitar and I would have had my fib, the 12 was around here, somewhere around here, the 25. And once I would have seen commitment, I would have targeted probably I think it was the 1 or the 87 or something like that, and I would have been fine. And it ranged throughout the day through here, and I had my box somewhere around here. I think it was like right around here, my 120 point box. So it kept going between, I think I can't remember the exact number in between the box, and I hadn't seen that, but this definitely played a big role in it. But in the end, I realized that I broke my number one rule. I don't trade until I get the new fair value zero, because that's given me a good footprint as to where the market has decided where's the fair price. And that's when I decide, once I have a fair price, either it's going to test outside of the box, a 120 point box, and it's going to move, or it's going to come back in. And of course, depending on my mids, and all that. Now that day, that specific day, guys, price was telling us that we were going to go south. So everything about market structure prior to it was out the window because of this particular stretch. So it was like, okay, just because it's telling us one thing doesn't mean that that's what it's going to do. So in the end, I guess for that particular day, for Thursday, the value is simple. Whatever rules you have in place for your system, your edge, follow them. And always wait for market to give you permission, for market to give you that confirmation. Okay? And if you're seeing something new or have something you haven't really seen for the first time, don't assume. Because I assumed that everything was going to go down. And yeah, everything was pointing for it to go south. And I ended up losing that first trade, and then I went on a little revenge trade, and it kept stopping me out because I had not encountered this type of day yet. This was a balanced day, by all means, today, that particular day, And if I had treated it like a balanced day, I would have been fine. I would have waited for my Remitar, for my new fair value zero, my new auction zero, for the post migration, I would have been fine. Alright, so that was on Thursday. So I said to myself, it's no big deal. I already know what I gotta do. Alright, you can see price, by the way, at one point made its move. Alright, almost at 1 p.m. Boom, made a move. And so I decided the next day, I'm just gonna wait for. I'm gonna wait for my post migration, and that's where I'm gonna enter. Okay. Now, something interesting happened again that specific morning. I was looking at the minis, the actual minis, not the micros, that specific morning. And um, when London was closing, I noticed the chart just stopped. And I was like, what? What the heck is going on here? In fact, I want to go back right now and see, because I have it here. See, it stopped. And I had all my levels here. And I knew that we were opening a specific way. I'm like, okay, it's opening inside value. Where are my mids? My mids are kind of pointing here. Okay, we got one here and we got another one here. So they're kind of telling me they're gonna balance. The market is gonna balance on top side first, and because price opened inside value and actually opened inside the mids, see that right there? I was like, we're in a compression mode. So I'm like, it's going to compress first, but it looks like it wants to compress to the top side and then it's gonna expand. That means it's gonna make a move. And so I'm like, you know what? So in that moment, I didn't panic. The old me would have panicked, to be honest with you. I went back to the micros and I said, okay, I know what kind of state we're gonna open up. All right. I know what kind of state we're gonna open up. So I just need to know a couple of things. I'm like, first things first, measure your session. So I measured from my Asia to my London. I got half of that and I created my fib with that. And then I waited for Remitar to post migrate, give us the new auction 0, the new fair value. And at that point, once it migrated, I created my 120 point box here. And so I put it right there with my 0. I put it right in the middle. You can see that, it's fairly close. Should be right here. Okay. And so let me kind of zoom in here. So once it migrated, Remitar did give me an entry for a short, but just because it gives me a short, it doesn't mean that automatically I'm gonna go with a short or assume that I gotta take a short right away. No. What I did, guys, is it was simple here. That morning I wanted to get in and get out. I was like, I'm gonna be done quickly. And what I did here is it's really simple. Let me because when I'm looking at the screen and I'm trading, and this is the way I'm looking at it. I'm not looking at it with the small candles. So once it migrated here, I put my 120 point box. You can see it here. And in case you're wondering what the 120 point box, guys, is from the post migration, the 0, the halfway point, I do 60 points this way, 60 points in this direction. Usually, if it decides it's going to also rotate or balance itself out, it's going to do it within this range here. And if it gets out, you can kind of expect to move there, right? So once I saw that it gave me a short entry, but I remember I said earlier that my mids were kind of, I guess they were kind of stretched out to the north side. Okay, That means that it was going to compress more to the north side at first and then get out. That's the way I kind of read it. And so once I saw price reject the 25 here and then it started moving up, I took a trade right here. I think it was here. And what did I target? I targeted, because it was here at the negative 25, I targeted the balance the other side. So I targeted the 25 and got out. Now, the one thing I forgot to tell you guys here is that you'll notice it says 15 here on my quantity. And I'm like, okay, I understand that 10 micros is equals to 1 mini. So I said, instead of trying to do 2 minis, which is 20 micros, I said, you know what, I'm going to go with 1.5. I've never done it like that. I said, let's see what it gives me. Let's see what, I wanted to see what the drawdown would look like, what the overall move, if it had if the impact was this big or, And so when I did the 15s and I went for that long, I noticed that it did give me a little bit of drawdown. It gave me some drawdown, but it didn't feel as psychologically as bad as 2 minis. And once it started moving, I did put my stop loss right below that negative 25. Okay, I may have put it right here by the box. Okay, and I targeted here and hit it. Now I decided to, once I was out, I decided to, I said, call it a day. I told myself it is Friday before. As a teacher, I get a 2-week break for spring break, and when I say a break, I'm like, it's really not a break because I'm waking up every day. Before I started looking into trading, it was nice to. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you a little bit backstory here. I used to coach cross country and track. Used to be very successful here in Texas. I led a lot of kids to the Texas State Championship. I had about 108 kids qualified to the state championship in the course of 16 years between cross country and track and field. Very small school I used to coach out by Tornillo, Texas. But anyways, I was very dedicated. So I was always waking up early and I'd be there at practice at 5:30 in the morning, and then we'd have another session in the afternoons, and I was always getting out early, coming back home late. Dedication to it, to what I was doing at that time. And I did it for 16 years, and then recently, about 4 years ago, I had an opportunity to come back home. Not come back home. I used to drive to where I worked. It was a 15-minute drive, but I ended up getting an opportunity to teach at my alma mater, and the way things worked out, I decided to not coach. With young family now in the works, my son, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take some time away from coaching, and I did take some time away, and it was nice for a while where I didn't have to wake up early, and not too early, because coaching and teaching, you wake up at 5 in the morning or maybe a little bit earlier, and then come home late, but with teaching, it's like I wake up at 6:30 in the morning, okay, and I'm home by 4 o'clock. As soon as I get out of work, I'm here. It's only like a 5-minute drive. So before I started looking into trading, I was like enjoying spring breaks and summer vacation where I didn't have to wake up early anymore, because in summers we didn't take any summers off. I was out there with the kids. We were practicing, getting them ready. we're always contending for that state championship. So, um, you know, if you want to be good at it, you have to dedicate yourself. And it's just like trading, right? You're gonna suck at the beginning. I mean, you're gonna struggle to figure out your edge, your system, and you take bits and pieces from different coaches. I was a runner myself, so a lot of my foundation was from my coach back in the days. But over time, you learn. Times have evolved, times have changed, and if you don't learn and you don't grow, you're gonna fall behind. And over time, I built a really good foundation. I built a really good culture out there, and it was one of the best in the state, I could say, in a place that's really difficult to coach, to be successful. Um, but anyway, so I started getting into to trading a couple years ago. And when I say a couple years ago, I was just looking at different things. I was looking at crypto. I was looking at forex at some point. I was trying to figure something out. And of course, as you know, you can't truly get better at it until you really decide to take it serious, right? And for a couple of years, I bought some courses here and there. And to be honest with you guys, they did not speak to me, these courses. I mean, because they didn't teach me the why. Why is this happening? Why does it work like this? It was all about learning patterns, recognizing a pattern. And maybe that can work for some people, but it didn't work for me. I've always been the type of person that what makes a system work. Just like in coaching, you don't just give a runner a 10-mile run and expect for him to all of a sudden get better. There has to be a system. It's a structure. You have your long runs, you have your threshold runs, you have your speed workouts, you have your tempo runs, and they have to balance. And you have to tailor it to the kid's abilities. You don't give the same type of workout that you give a 4-10-miler to a 5-10-miler. You just can't. You're gonna hurt the kid. You're gonna injure him or her. And so it's the same thing here. What works for some people doesn't work for others. And I started getting into trading, and at school I would try to look at the charts, when I could, and see what was going on. But it wasn't until, I want to say, about almost 5 months ago, that I really started asking the right questions about market structure and institutional trading. How do institutions trade? Right? That's what I wanted to learn. I started asking the right questions, and little by little, one thing led to another. And it's evolving. It's evolving. Like it changes, right? But you have to backtest your edge. You have to see what works, what doesn't work, and eventually figure something out. And so, with that said, I know it's a long story, right? I decided I wanted to take it serious. I'm gonna be serious about this. I've been there before where I have put some money into some accounts and I've gained some money, but I've also lost it. Last summer alone, I built an indicator and I thought I was ready. I was timing the indicator, and I managed to make like $6,000 in the week, and I was like, whoa, I felt good about myself. But sure enough, lo and behold, eventually the market humbled me, and not only did I lose it, but I lost even more. And for several months from there on, I was trying to still figure something out I couldn't figure out. And it wasn't until late October that I started asking the right questions and I started really learning. And so now I see the difference. Back then I was just trying to learn something. And now it's like, now I understand this is a process. You have to commit yourself. You have to treat it like a business. Okay? Just like coaching, you have to truly find what speaks to you, what works for you, and it's a journey that not everybody's going to speak the same. I gotta tell you on a personal note, I have a teacher colleague that I showed him about trading a little bit over a year ago. He's a very smart guy, and something told me, it was like God telling me, like, talk to him about it. And just yesterday, he started with options first. He went through a course. He started learning really good stuff. But just like I said right now, you can go through courses and all that, but in the end, you're gonna build what works for you, what speaks for you. And we started texting yesterday, and he had been, talking about his system, what he's working on. He made the change from options to futures. And just yesterday, I spoke with him, and he was like, he told me he had gone live now again, because we were kind of debating when to go live, and he made some really good gains, and I was so stoked for him. I was so proud of him, and it felt good to know that his system was working. And it's a journey, it's an individual journey, and so that's all I can tell you is that, if I'm hearing something. So anyway, so I will say this. I decided to to turn a long story here. I decided to take a nap, go back to bed, because I'm like, I haven't been taking any real days off from sleeping in, and I'm like, went back to bed. And I only went back to bed for a little while because my son woke up after a while, and once your kid wakes up, you can't go back to bed. But anyways, you can see that once it hit that 25, price started coming back. The balance was here. This was the balance right here. Now, it could have balanced again, once again, but at that point, it decided it was enough. Now, you'll notice here, when Remitar did the migration, normal. 36 points. Even 100 points can be normal. Okay? But this was very normal. And remember, this gave me an entry short. Okay? Honestly, once it crosses zero here, look at where it went straight to that thing, the box, and booyah. Honestly, once it started coming down from the 25, I should have targeted that negative 25, because it would have eventually made this move. But the reality is, if you had missed, again, the party, you were late to the party, once you see this candle breaking here, alright, or even here, the rejection, this was your move to signify, go for the 1, then, or even the negative 87. I've noticed now, this is a pattern. It doesn't mean it's guaranteed, but usually when it hits the negative 87 or the positive 87, it comes back to the 62, somewhere in there, and then it comes, and eventually goes down to the 1. But you can see how price, not only did it go to the 1, at one point it did come back. Okay, but look, price ended up coming back down. I've seen another thing too, when your European starts, if you set up an alert here, and once you see a body claiming something here, passing this level here, there's a good chance that FIP's gonna go to the negative 1.5, or in this case, it went all the way to the negative 2. Look, past it. Wow. So yeah. So there it is, guys. There's my video for the last couple of days. I apologize if I made it a little bit longer than I expected, but hopefully you guys got some good educational content here. Once again, if you enjoyed it, I would truly appreciate like my son says, hit the subscribe button, hit the like, share, comments. That would be truly appreciated. And welcome. Like I said, I'm on this journey for the long haul, and Everything is a learning experience. Every day trading teaches you not just about the charts but about yourself. And patience is key. Patience is key. And journal, video journal if you can. I'm doing it for myself because I feel like I'm gonna remember more. Because I've gone back to some of the videos already done, and it does help remember. Truly does. That is one of our dogs wanting to go inside. All right, all right. We'll talk to you guys later. Remember, everything that I share here is educational purposes. It's not financial advice. Okay. But once again, please join me on my journey here, and we can learn a thing or two. All right. Talk to y'all later.